Hi everybody, my name is Lynette and welcome to the garden. Today's project is going to be to clean out the pond. It is a beautiful day, 73 degrees, the sun is shining, the wind is blowing a little bit, so you may hear that in the microphone. Speaking of the microphone, I'm going to be taking it off once I get down into the pond because I don't want to take the chance that it's going to fall in there. Therefore, I will probably be doing voiceovers for most of this video. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do is going to be to empty that pond of all its water. And to do that, we use a sump pump. We lower the sump pump inside a bucket down into the pond. And the reason we put it inside a bucket is because the bottom of that pond is filled with muck. And I don't want my sump pump to get clogged up. So the bucket prevents that. We run a hose from the sump pump out to one of the trees that desperately needs water. And we just turn the pump on and then we just water away. While we're waiting for this water to go down a little bit more, you'll notice that I have buckets all around the pond. I have a little pan to scoop some stuff up. I also have fish nets, different sizes, so that I can get in here. The buckets are to put the fish in. The big container is to put any frogs in that we catch. And the plants, I'm just going to take up and toss them out along the side for right now. I did buy a lot of water hyacinths this year, and I was hoping that they would help fill in, but they did nothing. So I don't know if I'm going to even try and overwinter them. Now that the sump pump has gotten the water down to at least the level of that bucket, which is probably about 8 inches, it's time for me to get in and start doing some of the dirty work. The first thing I'm going to do is start scooping out those plants and putting them along the side of the pond. Once I have all that plant debris removed, it's time to start scooping out some water for the fish and frogs that I capture. To do this, I use a little saucepan. It's an old saucepan that I don't use anymore. I save it specifically for this job every year. And I just put a couple scoops of water into the bottom of each of the buckets so that when I dump the frogs and fish in, they've already got some water to swim in. Now it's time to go after those frogs with one of the nets. Now, since the water is cold, the frogs are moving a little bit slower, which is really nice, but they can still get away from you rather easily. Now, we have several types of frogs here, and I think in total I pulled out probably a dozen frogs from this pond. We have green frogs, we have pickerel frogs, we have wood frogs, and we have bullfrogs. Now, the bullfrogs and the green frogs are the biggest frogs that I have here in the pond, and we try and scoop them out throughout the year. And the reason for that is because they are so big that they can actually eat the goldfish. The others are a little bit smaller and they can't eat them. Now, in case you're playing Jeopardy and the question comes up, how can you tell a male frog from a female frog, especially in the bullfrogs? That's because of the tympanium membrane, which is its eardrum, which is located just behind its eye. It's a large circle, and if the circle is larger than the frog's eye, that means it's a male bullfrog. Now it's time to start manually emptying the pond by bucket by bucket. I scoop up some water, I pour that water into a bigger bucket, carefully looking to make sure that I'm not scooping up any fish, frogs, tadpoles, salamanders, anything like that. Once the big green bucket is full, I'm going to tip that over onto the patio. And again, I'm carefully looking to make sure that I haven't scooped up anything live. And if I do, I'll hop out of the pond, pick it up, and throw it into one of the bucket of waters with the frogs or the fish, whichever is appropriate. As the water level gets lower and lower, it's easier and easier to see the fish. Sometimes you can just scoop them up with your hands, but most of the time it's easier to use the net. These aren't fancy, expensive goldfish. They are just feeder fish. Years ago, when we put this pond in, we threw in a couple dozen feeder fish, and over the years, they have multiplied, and we add fresh fish every couple of years so that we get the genetic diversity in there. And we do have one fish that is about 6 or 7 inches long, so we know that one has survived multiple seasons. Now, the reason we scoop the fish out is because This pond is 2 feet deep. It is a stock tank that we just set in the ground, and it will freeze solid in the winter. So rather than let these poor fish die, every year I go in and clean out the pond just to save the fish and the frogs. Eventually you get to the bottom of the pond where all you're left with is the muck, in which case you have to go in and use your hands and scoop it into the bucket. And at the same time, you got to still watch for the fish because sometimes they get caught in that muck. After about an hour of this disgusting job, I have had enough and I'm calling it quits. I think I've got enough of the muck scooped out and I've got all the fish and frogs pulled out so they'll be safe for the winter. Here's a look at the frogs, and you can see how disgustingly dirty that water is. The frogs, I'm going to take them down to the creek and set them free, and hopefully they can find a space in the mud down there to overwinter. The goldfish are going to spend the next 6 months down in the basement in a nice big aquarium where they can swim and be happy. Now that I have all the living things cleaned out of that pond and I don't have to worry about things dying over the winter, I can shift my thoughts to other things. My sister is coming, I need to get the house cleaned, and I have an awful lot of mouths to feed. This next clip will explain what I'm talking about. We live in the absolutely best little neighborhood. We all bring our special talents and we share those talents amongst ourselves. Our neighbor Rich is a roofer. He's got his crew over here and they're putting a new roof on our house. We have Kevin, who's a mechanic. Then we have Todd, who can build decks and do some fine carpentry. Kasha, his wife, is a hairdresser. Sue and Duff, ambulance driver and nurse. And then, of course, the girls across the street rescue puppies and dogs. What could be better? We all moved onto this vacant land about 18 years ago, and together, all of us, we've all added on garages and decks and porches, and we've all worked together to do it. Love all my neighbors. They're great. A few days have passed, my sister has gone home, and I'm back to working on the pond. Unfortunately, the weather's not 73 degrees anymore, so playing in water is not my favorite thing. There seems to be quite a bit of water up in the basin of the fountain, and I need to get that out before I move it. Otherwise, it's just going to run down my arms and my back. So I'm using a little cottage cheese container to just scoop it out and dump it along the side. Once the fountain's empty, I'm going to assess the situation. I'm going to balance this on my shoulders, lifting with my knees so I don't hurt my back, and I'm just going to transfer it from the center of the pond to the edge on the outside. Easy peasy. When I cut the hostas down that were around the pond, some of the leaves fell in. So I'm just going to take this opportunity to get in there and clean out any of that extra debris before we start filling the pond back up. This poor fountain has seen better days. You can see that the outside coating, the smooth coating, the paint is starting to fleck off and it's exposing the raw metal underneath it. If anybody has experienced this and has any suggestions on how to repair it that won't hurt any fish and I can still use it as a fountain, please leave a message in the comments. We're going to store the fountain and the pump that goes with it in the garage, someplace where it can't freeze, because we don't want to take the chance that that freezing water as it expands, that it might crack the seal on the pump or even damage the fountain. To fill the pond back up, we're going to pump water from the stream. Now, normally I would say we could just use it from the hose, but because we're in a drought here, I didn't want to take a chance of draining our well any more than necessary. So we're just going to run a gas-powered pump, send some hoses up to the pond, and we're just going to let it fill up. Now, this pond is about 700 gallons, and the only reason that we're emptying it is to save the 19 goldfish and the 12 frogs that called that place home. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please be sure to share, like, and subscribe, and check back next year because I think I'm going to start adding some water lilies. Take care. Have a great day. Get out in your garden and have some fun.